Homeless man tests the royal guard. The guard's response is stunning. The streets of London were alive with the usual flurry of tourists snapping photos, children laughing, and the rhythmic sounds of cars passing by. It was a cold afternoon outside Buckingham Palace, where a crowd gathered to admire the famous royal guard standing tall and motionless in their traditional red uniforms. Amidst the bustling city, Daniel Carter, a homeless man in his mid-50s, shuffled through the crowd. His ragged coat barely kept out the biting cold, his boots were worn thin, and his face bore the marks of years spent on the streets. He watched the tourists with weary eyes, knowing that their attention would never be on someone like him. Then, his gaze landed on one of the royal guards, standing like a statue at his post. Daniel smirked. "Bet I can get you to talk," he muttered under his breath. The guards were famous for their unwavering discipline, but surely, even they had limits. With slow, deliberate steps, Daniel approached the soldier. "Hey there, mate. Got a spare coin for a fella down on his luck?" His voice was rough, yet tinged with humor. The guard didn't move. His gaze remained locked forward, his expression unreadable. Daniel chuckled. "What? No charity for an old soldier," he said, rubbing his hands together. "That's right, I served once, too. Long before life got the better of me." Still, the guard remained silent. The crowd began to take notice. Some whispered among themselves, while others pulled out their phones, eager to see what would happen next. A few onlookers laughed, treating Daniel's attempt as another tourist stunt to make the guard flinch. But Daniel wasn't there for entertainment. He was cold, tired, and just needed a little warmth, in any form. Underscore 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 underscore. As the cold wind picked up, Daniel rubbed his arms and took a step closer. "Come on, lad. Just a nod, a wink, something to show you're human under there." The tourists chuckled. A man nearby whispered to his friend, "He's wasting his time." Those guards never react. But Daniel wasn't giving up just yet. He tried everything: jokes, military stories, even light-hearted insults. "I bet that big OL hat of yours is warmer than my whole coat." "Swap?" "No? Thought not." Still, the guard didn't move. The playful glint in Daniel's eyes faded as the cold bit deeper into his bones. His fingers trembled, his breath came in short, visible puffs. The show was over for the tourists. They had seen enough. One by one, they turned away, moving on to their next attraction, leaving Daniel alone in the freezing air. Then, suddenly, the sky darkened. Fat droplets of icy rain began to fall, turning the pavement into a slick mirror. Daniel shuddered violently, wrapping his thin coat tighter around himself. The guard stood firm, still unmoved by the freezing rain. Daniel let out a bitter laugh. "Well, guess it's just you and me, soldier. Let's see who lasts longer." The rain came down harder, soaking Daniel to the bone. He huddled under the palace wall, his body shaking uncontrollably. His once playful demeanor had vanished, replaced by a quiet, desperate stillness. His lips turned blue, his fingers stiffened. He knew he should move, find shelter, anything, but exhaustion weighed him down. Years of surviving on the streets had worn him thin, and the relentless cold was finally winning. Then, in the midst of his silent suffering, a movement. A tiny, almost imperceptible shift in the guard's posture. Daniel barely noticed it at first. But then, something heavy dropped at his feet. A woolen scarf. Thick, dark, military grade. Daniel's breath hitched. His eyes flicked up to the guard, who hadn't moved at all. His hands were still positioned exactly as they had been, except now, he was missing the scarf he'd been wearing tucked beneath his uniform. Daniel swallowed hard. He reached down, fingers numb, and picked up the scarf. The warmth was immediate, as if the fabric itself carried a silent understanding. He stared at the guard for a long moment. The man remained frozen in place, his face unreadable, but Daniel knew this was intentional. A gift. A silent act of compassion. The guard couldn't break his composure, couldn't acknowledge what he had done, but he had still found a way to help. Daniel pulled the scarf around his neck, the warmth spreading through him like an ember in a long-dead fire. His fingers gripped the thick wool as he stared at the soldier, who remained motionless. For the first time in years, Daniel felt something deeper than the cold, a quiet, wordless respect. He straightened his posture, nodding slightly in gratitude. No words were needed. This moment, this silent exchange, was more powerful than any conversation could have been. A police officer passing by noticed the scarf in Daniel's hands and the way he looked at the guard. The officer's gaze softened as he realized what had happened. Without hesitation, he approached Daniel. "Come on, mate. Let's get you somewhere warm," the officer said, placing a firm but gentle hand on his shoulder. Daniel hesitated, glancing back at the guard one last time. The soldier, of course, remained still. With a small smile, Daniel turned and followed the officer. His steps felt lighter, his heart just a little warmer. Underscore 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 underscore. As Daniel disappeared into the city, the rain finally began to ease. The sun peeked through the clouds, casting a golden glow over the palace gates. The guard remained at his post, unchanged, unnoticed by the next wave of tourists snapping their pictures. But one person in the crowd had seen everything. A young boy, no older than 10, stood beside his father, gripping his small camera. He had watched the entire exchange. The homeless man, the freezing cold, the silent act of kindness. The boy turned to his father, eyes wide. "Did you see that?" he whispered. The soldier helped him. His father smiled softly. "Yes, son. Not all heroes need to move." The boy nodded, eyes gleaming with admiration. And as he snapped a picture of the guard, not for the uniform, but for the man behind it, he knew he would never forget what he had seen that day. True strength isn't always loud. Sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is stand your ground and still show kindness.